My grades were not as good as they should have been. Actually, they were pretty bad. And my parents, instead of sending me on holiday somewhere, they said, you stay here in Madrid and work in something. And somebody knew somebody that had just opened an office in Madrid. The company was called EDI at the time, Entertainment Data International. They needed callers just to win theaters and see how the figures were going. So I started there, just working at night, making those calls, and it ended up being a 26-year job.
Wow. My guest today is Arturo, a global business leader, media strategist, and as you'll hear, a thoughtful student of life. In this conversation, we traced his unexpected journey from academic underperformance to a 26-year career in the entertainment data industry, and eventually to co-founding a mixed martial arts league in Spain. Along the way, Arturo opens up about discovering ADHD later in life, why value creation, not just education, should be taught in schools, and how bullfighting became a deeply philosophical pursuit for him. If you've ever felt like the traditional path wasn't built for you, or if you are navigating the intersection of passion and purpose, this one's for you. Arturo, welcome to the One Away Show.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It's great to have you. So Arturo, I've gotten to know you a little bit. I love kind of how you think about life. So I'm excited to dive in today. What is the one away moment that you want to share with us today?
It'd be difficult for me to pick one because there's so many things in life that change the way that you're driving. I guess for me, when I was at school in the last year at school, my grades were not as good as they should have been. Actually, they were pretty bad. And my parents, instead of sending me on holiday somewhere, they said, you stay here in Madrid and work in something. And somebody knew somebody that had just opened an office in Madrid. The company was called EDI at the time, Entertainment Data International. They needed callers just to win theaters and see how the figures were going. So I started there, just working at night, making those calls, and it ended up being a 26-year job.
Wow. What, you said 26 years?
26 years, yeah.
Wow. So let's dive into the whole school part. Just curious, was school not your thing growing up? Was it, were you seeing other aspects in life? Kind of what was your, at an earlier age, how did education kind of fit into your kind of greater ambitions of life?
I really didn't fit in. First of all, I was very mature, I guess. Now I have 4 daughters, and I realized that boys are probably less mature than girls. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But I recently learned that I have ADHD. ADHD is how you say it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I'm not able to, and I don't think it's anything bad, by the way. It's actually, I see it as a superpower. And the downside is that I'm not capable of deciding where do I want to put my attention. So at school, I was, good in some subjects and very bad in others. And it wasn't a matter, at least for me, it wasn't a matter of putting more effort. It was just a matter of attention. I remember, when I was to go home with my grades not as good as they should, and my parents telling me off, and I would pray at night saying, hey, from tomorrow, I will pay attention in class and I will listen to what the teachers are saying. And, I was 10 minutes in the class or probably 10 seconds and my mind would be somewhere else. I would be thinking about the football game or whatever. And it's just, schools, they don't work the same for everyone. I learned a lot by interaction with other human beings, but definitely not in class. And I've, with time, it hasn't been so influential in my life. I've done okay without having good grades. And some kids grow up with this idea that unless they do well at school, they won't do well at life. And it's just not like that. It's just you have to earn it every day, I guess. And it could be both ways, but you can go both ways. You can be a great student and have a not so good life, and also the other way around.
So what I'm hearing you say is, the direct correlation between being a top student and doing well in life isn't so direct, even though that's what it's made to believe. But for you, it sounds like there were, even though your mind was maybe wandering, I relate very much to this conversation. But so it sounds like even though your mind was wandering, it was in other, places that you were thinking about in life and kind of different aspects of who you were and what you were interested in.
Look, it took me 40 few years to realize about that. I wish that somebody had told me when I was at school that, it's not that you're lazy or it's not that you're dumb. It's just that your mind is somewhere else. But again, I don't regret anything. It's a superpower, and I'm very happy.
Totally. And tell me, just because I'm curious about, like your family and upbringing was kind of your kind of what were the paths of your kind of parents from a career perspective? Kind of what were some of the kind of formative lessons taught to you?
I was a single child. I don't know if that's good or bad. Of a man that was in the army, and my mother was a scientist. I guess my like most kids of that time, father wasn't much at home, and I was most of the time with my mother, and they both of them taught me from the beginning the value of courage and doing right. Right? We never thought that everything is acceptable to reach the goals, but that you have to have the right attitude and the right posture towards achieving what you're trying to achieve. Otherwise, it's not worth. So, I don't know how to say this in English. Cutting corners is never an option. Hacer trampas, how you call these? When you're playing cards and you're faking the cards that you have, those are not things for us. You always have to, the best way to get what you want is to earn it. And I've always obeyed by that rule. And I'm very happy that they taught me in such a way, because, unless you have values, it's much more difficult to manage yourself through life. And they definitely gave me that.
Wow. I mean, it's funny, when I first met you, I think your presence has like a lot of like strength and kind of just the kind of an energy that you emulate. And I mean that in a positive way. And it's interesting when you talk about your childhood, you talk about your parents kind of instilling courage and doing things the right way. So just interesting to track back the early signs of it. Now, so you talked a little bit about upbringing, you talked a little bit about school and maybe, mind being in a different place. And then, how that kind of forced you, kind of entered you into the workforce where maybe you spent the first 26 years. I would love to know a little bit more about kind of that job, so the jobs within that job, the career that began to unfold for you.
So look, it was, I guess in many cases, it happens the same thing, right? It was a really coincidence. And how something that originally was like a punishment or something that, wasn't a reward for sure, turned out to be a great reward in life. This summer of 1996, instead of going out on vacation with my friends, I stay in Madrid and work in this company that I was telling you, EDI, founded by a great woman, Marcy Polier, a visionary that I think she was 22 when she founded the company in 1977. They grew a lot and they measured how the movie industry behaved, and they became a critical tool for the industry to operate. In 1996, they expanded to Spain. As I was saying earlier, somebody knew somebody that got me into dealing with the computer and typing in data. And that was a huge difference from me, because instead of studying something that I didn't like. I was working for, the creation of value, and I was making some money. And, from the beginning, to me, it was pretty obvious how this concept that is not taught at schools about value creation was done, right? There's somebody that has to actually do the work. And if I was able to collect something, which in this case was data, manage it, and then distribute it, there was somebody willing to pay for it. But why would that be? It was because, it's a hard work. There's a lot of data that has to be captured and organized in ways that we can make sense out of it. So, it taught me that sometimes things in life that are not meant to be good or nice to you turn out being great things. I would never thought that I was going to be there for 26 years. Where I basically build a career, and I would also say build a personal life. I made my path through, running some countries and then the global operations, and I learned every minute of it. I remember once having dinner in New York with the CFO at the time, COO and CFO at the time of the company, which was a public company. And the guy was asking me, so, how do you feel? How are you doing with the company? And I said, look, I should be paying for this. I said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm learning so much that, and I'm so grateful that, the only reason why you guys are paying me is because I'm creating enough value or more value than the one that you're paying me. But definitely, I've learned so much that I'm very, very grateful. And that's something I recommend, to kids that come see me asking for advice. Not that my advice has to be good, but I always tell them, you can go work for free at the beginning. You don't have a mortgage. You don't have schools to pay. As long as what you learn, it is worth. And I still think that is a right way to move forward when somebody's starting their careers.
Wow. It sounds like you were, the thirst for knowledge, a thirst for kind of putting your heads down and kind of hands in the dirt to accumulate knowledge and skills that could compound. I really like what you were saying about, maybe working for free or, just learning and realizing like that's going to allow you to earn, later in life. And what a way to kind of approach that dinner conversation. Just a question for you, you were talking about data, organizing data, making that valuable, value creation. When you think about like back when you were first kind of starting, do you have any understanding of, data research, like the business that you were in at large and like why that was so valuable? Or was that kind of all kind of brand new to you and you were just really trying to absorb and make sense? Like what was your knowledge of that kind of going into the job, and kind of once you got your hands really in the dirt of it, how did that open your eyes up to maybe the industry or other opportunities?
So definitely not. I mean, I had no curiosity for data analytics or not even the movie industry. It was just a coincidence. And then I just got hooked by it. I'm a big, I admire immensely the entire theatrical industry worldwide. I think that the work they're doing is amazing. I think, people as they grow up, they are told by society that they need to have everything figured out. And how could you, when you're in your 20s, or in my case, I was, I think, 18 or 19. Sometimes I think, we need to learn what we want by exposure to things or emotions. In my case, I had no intentions to work with data or analytics. And it just happened to be a passion that I would have had never known about unless I exposed myself to that experience. I sometimes fantasize with the idea of, instead of I've had universities where you can try different jobs for a month, where you can be help a law firm, be a taxi driver, work at a bar, at a fish shop, whatever. Things that will teach you the things that matter and how to create value in each one of them. So, again, going back to your question, I think especially for you, you have to have everything figured out. You just have to be patient and calm that things will come to you if you're willing to put in the work and use common sense. Those are the only two things that I think that matter.
Thanks for sharing that. I think it's an open-minded view of education and skill building that you have, one that I think is taking shape as the tools of today are bringing us all that education school can teach us. So hopefully those reforms take place. You value creation just seems to be a central theme for you at large. When you think about just creating value, or when someone's paying you and kind of you saying, hey, my return on this is greater, or you mentioned you have $4 and you're talking about being productive citizens in the world and creating value. How do you fundamentally, or what are your principles around value creation or showing up and being of value? Like, well, what does that look like to you, perhaps in work, but also other parts of life?
The first idea about value creation, I just don't understand how that is not a subject or something that you're looking at in school, right? So we spend so much time learning about things that might not matter or might not be useful, that those things do really help people make a living. So what is value creation, right? I think it's something it's as simple as creating something or giving a service that people are willing to pay for it, right? Or increasing the value of something that has a determined value from the start. So you have a cake and you put some sugar on top and make it better, and somebody's willing to pay added value for that, or you make it look nicer, whatever that is, something that somebody will be willing to pay more for it. Because sometimes we can spend time in things that we believe are great, but we only believe that and nobody's willing to pay that extra price. So there's a connection between where you spend your time and attention and how others will interact with that you have created. So you cannot do it just, for yourself, right? It's like a movie. There has been a lot of discussions about, movies being art, entertainment, culture, whatever. It's a bit of all, right? But somebody said, a very, very important director said that a movie cannot be considered as such until it has been watched by somebody. I think it's pretty clear that, the audience, the customers, those that have to be willing to give up more are a fundamental part of this. And we're in this world right now where they tell you that, no, you do your thing, you do what you want, and forget about the rest. I don't think it works like that. We live in a society, and you have to follow some rules, and this is one of them. Create value to make a living.
I like how you think about it, and I think it's a mindset shift too for an entrepreneur, but also just an everyday person in the workforce, kind of thinking about why they're showing up to a job, right? And yes, the job benefits you and kind of gives you skill sets and things, but it's kind of flipping the script and understanding what it's doing for the people you're delivering for is very I like how you're describing it. Arturo, a question I have for you is, it seems that in your career, I think you said EDI was where you started, but it was at the intersection of movies and data. I know you moved on and we're doing other work in the movie and media space. What do you think? You said when you do certain things and you get exposure through emotion and experience, you kind of see what you like and don't like. But for you and your career, it seems like the media side of things, movies, entertainment, sports to a degree, has been a central thread. What is it about the industries at large that maybe has kept you in the game all these years and continue to innovate and take on opportunities? What about that industry that do you love?
But I guess the challenge, right? You don't want to have an easy thing to do, but something that will require the best out of you so you can see the improvement within yourself. The movie industry, the theatrical industry has gone through many challenges lately. COVID was one of them. Then all these discussions about people preferring to stay at home and watch a movie in their houses. All these interested views that had not much to do with their reality. I have found that as long as I'm challenged, I'm able to perform. I used to work with a guy very close in my team that, no matter what, the guy would always do extremely well. I wasn't wired that way. If I don't see, if I don't feel that, I wouldn't call it pressure, but if I don't feel that fit, that sense that unless I do my best, I won't be able to deliver, I just get lazy. And that's, very applicable to the entertainment industry where there's so much competition. The way it's divided between sports and entertainment, I don't think it should be, right? Both are competing for the attention of viewers. But it is such a wide area, every country, every narrative, every genre, every audiovisual model. There's so many people participating in it, and it is so visible that it's always in constant change, and it's always somebody trying to do what you do, but you're doing it. So we were constantly challenged, and that kept me very, very close towards the daily operations of the business. If we look at, when we started in 1996, where you would watch TV in your houses, or you would go to a theater, and that would be basically it in terms of screen time. Now with computers, with phones, we're exposed to them every single minute, no matter where we are. And that makes the industry so much fun.
You've had a front row seat to how, from my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, you've had a front row seat to how content is consumed over the last, say 30 years, 25 years. And it's been a challenge, obviously there's distribution, technology, but the challenge of really understanding how things are consumed and kind of how they kind of meet the market around kind of this field of content creation and consumption. And it seems like it's just because of the technological landscape, like there's always challenges that you've been met with to have to figure out. Is that fair?
Yeah, as I was saying, right, from the beginning, there wasn't many options. Now you have way too many. Mm-hmm. So there's a constant competition between apps, content providers, content distributors to seek for your attention. Something that I found very interesting on this process is that there is a direct correlation between the size of the screen and the average time spent per consumption. What that means is that the longer the screen that you're looking at, the more likely you are to watch a larger content. It doesn't mean you will spend less time in a shorter screen, but you might. But the way it would work is that you might watch, 10 episodes of 5 minutes in your phone, but you'd rather watch a 2-hour movie in a larger screen, ideally in a theater. It's interesting to see the viewership patterns based on the devices that we're using. And it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. I was told the other day, I'm not sure this is true, but from where it came from, it must be, that in China there are shows that last a minute. Each episode lasts just 1 minute. Yeah, from whole episode, with an end into it, and that's somehow where we're going. I always want to think that long form content will always have its space, but you can see it in youth and how they're more into shorter sports than into maybe soccer. People are spending less time in each transaction than they used to, which is not necessarily bad. It's just different. We'll see how the next few years go.
I mean, not surprised. I mean, one of my questions, I have a 16-year-old sister, and she's short content. I mean, it makes sense, I think, for younger generations. But do you think that? I guess let me ask this first question. It sounds like, do you place value on very meaningful long form content? Do you hold long form content to be more meaningful if it's done the right way?
I would like to think so. I think sometimes you need time to properly tell a story. And unless you're able to have the correct narrative behind it, you're not able to put the right or the meaningful ending into it. So I guess it's easier, to watch, to just read the subject of a new, but unless you read the whole thing, you already know what's going on. This is the unfortunate reality of the clickbait thing with the media, right? They want to put an article that captures your attention, and then you don't read anything else, but that impact you'll have with you. Sometimes to properly appreciate something, you need to have some time into it. And now we have these attention seekers that constantly require a look to go from here to a different place, and it's difficult to make a sense out of it sometimes.
No, I mean, I love what you said. It's to appreciate something, you need to kind of have a commitment to it, or even an emotional commitment to it, because the longer you spend with something, the more you become invested. Given this, I mean, just giving your background and kind of how you see consumer behavior and correlation on screen times, when you think about narrative and narrative structure, and you think about long form content as a medium to consume in general, and maybe it sounds like a taste that you appreciate because of what it requires in terms of time, when we have so many more distractions than ever. What do you think are the ingredients? If there was a recipe, I know there's no perfect recipe, but if there were pillars that meet long form content, whether movie, writing, the mix of both, what do you think is required to hold attention for longer periods of time and really create an impact on a consumer experience?
That's a tough question, because there's not a recipe for success, right? What I might like, you might think it's boring, but there are some things that move the souls of the audience. So I think content creators have a responsibility that goes beyond entertaining. If you have the power to impact millions of human beings, you have to be responsible with what you do with the attention of those viewers. And it's been, I think it's right to think that the historical values of humankind do relate to humans. So, when you do content that has some ethic into it, or has some eternal values such as personal growth, or how you face fear, how you face adversity, how you grow from the challenge, how you work to find out your best version. People relate to that because there's definitely a reward into all of those values, and there's a reward in watching somebody else do it as well. So again, there's no golden recipe, but there are things that normally help, and there's definitely what I believe is responsibility into content creators so that they can prepare content that at least a little bit improves the viewers. Because, as we were saying earlier, right? The audience has become almost a part of the content, right? If you go to a play and people laugh with you or clap with you or have fear with you, it's a much more intense emotion than if you're doing this on your own. So I think the audience have to be always right up front in the process of creation of content.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying. I think we do. I mean, we do have a responsibility for kind of what we put out, especially if we have an audience, and how that's shaping behavior, shaping responses. And something that I'm noticing, and I would say, yeah, from you, is you seem to be fairly intuitive, and you kind of like can tap into the other side, trying to get a pulse on kind of what's needed. Like, what do you think that? I guess where do you think you've developed? And tell me if I'm wrong, but where do you think you've developed maybe some of those qualities to kind of really? It sounds like you can size things up pretty well in life, or you meet someone and you're very perceptive, right? And I can completely see how that might lend itself to success in the industry you've been in, given kind of what you're doing. But where do you think that comes from?
I guess it's a life experience, right? I guess we all grow in very similar ways. We learn by trial and error, like computers with zeros and ones. Human beings learn that fire burns by burning themselves. And we all, in this process of maturing, get to understand those things that do well to us and those things that don't. And sometimes we get surprises on the way. Sometimes those things that we thought were, we grew up with this idea sometimes that, hard work can be bad, and then you learn that hard work always pays off. And we tried, and this is where you're going to go about bullfighting, but, we told that we have to avoid pain or bad feelings or huge effort. And then you realize that through those is where you find your growth. And you realize that when you've been really, really challenged, when you've been in a very difficult position, is when you show your best version. Is when you dig inside yourselves and you find out that this might actually be worth. This is a personal idea, and I can perfectly be wrong here, but I believe that many people don't expose themselves to huge challenge because they fear what they're going to find. They fear that when they're going to dig deep into their souls, they might find something, their pure essence, that they might not like. And I think that's just not possible. I think that, when you dig deep enough, when you are really confronted with severe challenge, you show your best version, and then you get identified with it, and you recognize yourself as a better human being overall, and that will give you the base to face greater challenges. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm sometimes surprised that in this society, people try to avoid challenge.
Well, I mean, what's coming through, right, is, I mean, it sounds like courage was instilled with you growing up. That kind of gave you, I'm going to go seek out these challenges in life. And what you're saying is I've experienced a lot of pain probably by seeking these challenges. But on the flip side, right, it's enabled you to get to know yourself, in ways that you otherwise wouldn't, because of maybe having to dig in deep and kind of understand who you were when your back was against the wall, or when you had to figure something out. And that sense of self or kind of perceptiveness like kind of accumulated through a lot of life experience. One of the things you were talking about was pain and kind of the highs, the lows. And you told me on our first call, and even before we got on, I wanted to dive into this just because I've never met anyone who's done this. But you were a bullfighter, and tell us about that, or tell me more about kind of what made you want to do that. What was that experience like? I'd love for you to dive in.
Bullfighting always creates arguments and conflicts, and I fundamentally think that is because of a lack of knowledge. Bullfighting, first of all, is not a sport or is not a competition. It's an art. There's no winners or losers. The fact that most of the times the bull dies doesn't mean that it is lost, because we all are going to die eventually. But it's a performance that teaches us about the two sides of the same coin. You cannot value life unless you have the concept of death very close to you. And no other art, at least the ones that I know, show that as well as bullfighting does. We live in a world where there are kids that are eating a hamburger that they don't realize that in theory that hamburger would be something running a few days before, because we're trying to avoid this concept of death, which is fundamental towards the survival of others. When you look at nature, the fox goes out and kills a duck or wherever and eats it. It's not doing anything bad. It's just how nature is built out. Nature is not easy, and that concept of giving death to an animal to eat it is very important, because it shows the respect that you have for that animal. It shows the importance of giving death to something in order to provide life to something else. Bullfighting presents that in a very good way, because the bull is gonna get killed no matter what, even if it catches the matador. But in that process of giving death to an animal, there's a greater good being presented, and that is with the values that we were talking earlier about the narrative, which is facing your fears, facing adversity, and growing out of it. And the bull is never an item that has to be disrespected or anything like that. It's actually the other way around. The brave bull, has the respect of an entire audience and brings the values that we want to have for ourselves, which is fundamentally being brave. And what is brave being about? Is about facing adversity and growing from the challenge. There are parts of the bull. The first thing that I should have said is actually that the first mistake is the translation into English, bullfight. There's no fight. If there was a fight, somebody would be winning, which is not the case. This is not a fight. This is like almost a liturgy between a man and a bull towards creating something greater that can inspire an audience. And that would, show the soul of somebody. When I was talking about the respect to the bull, is that the bull would get bigger out of the pain and would get bigger out of the challenge. An animal that is not brave would somehow hide and not face the battle, or not face the challenge that has in front of it. The bull actually gets bigger and more aggressive, and because it's protecting its most important value, which is life, and that's how it should be. Never giving up, never getting smaller, and never allowing pain getting over us, but actually the opposite, allowing the pain to be the fuel that would make us stronger. Same goes for the matador. When the matador gets caught, which happens, it's not supposed to, it's very much like in sumo in Japan, it's not supposed to show that he's going through pain. It's supposed to not even look at the pain, not even pretend like there is no pain, because life doesn't care. The world doesn't care that you're in pain. And in fact, if you're into the pain, likely you won't be able to perform as good. You don't want people to feel sorry for you. You want people to feel inspired by you. And bullfighting shows that in so many ways that in fact, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of rubbish as well. There's many times things don't go well. Many times it's just like I won't call it fake, but definitely not pure. And most of the times, or many times, it has become kind of boring. So that is also true. But when it goes well, it's it will get you like hooked for the rest of your life and always seek to the process of learning that you've had when you were fortunate to watch something good.
I'm just going to position you in my head as a pain seeker and a challenge seeker, because, if I follow a similar life, I'll develop more courage. It's an ode to living a good life. You said something, though, that was really profound. You said giving death to something breathes life into something else, something along that nature. And I think, so interesting, and I think so true, right? And a number of facets of life, whether a relationship, a loved one, it's a very profound statement.
In this, I'm probably likely in the US probably more, right? Animals, they get fed, they grow up, and they get killed, and then you're served with a nice sirloin on a plate. But somebody has to actually do the work, and that work of taking life out of an animal, it's super important. In bullfighters are called matadors, the death givers, that translates. And it shouldn't be so that they can provide to the rest with food. We eat the bull or the pork or the beef or whatever. So I think, our society has taken that away from us, trying to take away the whole idea of death, which is not good. I think that's behind a lot of mental issues, The only certainty is that will come. So we better get along with it in the best way that we can.
Yeah, no, I love how you see life in the world. It's a beautifully kind of refreshing perspective. Arturo, I'd love to also, we have about 5-10 minutes left here. I'd love for you to tell us what you're up to today. I know we've talked about a lot of, I think, really interesting and stimulating things, but with the company that you've co-founded and built, I'd love for you to share what you're doing now.
Sure. So, after 26 years working on the corporate world, I thought it was time for me to move on and do other things. And I was very, very inspired by mixed martial arts. My first connection with mixed martial arts wasn't good because I was completely wrong about what it actually was. And then as soon as I understood about its values, which are very similar to El Torero, I got completely hooked by it. I just lost my mind to mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I started a company with a couple of friends about a league promoting this sport with only one intention, which is, and a very simple one, which is creating the stage for these incredible athletes to shine and inspire audiences. Sometimes the lack of knowledge allows the wrong ideas to grow in our minds about what something is. And the people that comes to our event and watches the combats or the fights, they go like crazy about how impressive these athletes are. So we're doing very well. The sport almost didn't exist not long ago in Spain, and now it does. And we're getting arenas with 8,000 people. They got really, really crazy about what they see within the octagon, and they get really, really surprised about the depth of views of these fighters. And I think actually, and this is again, in everything that I say, I can be perfectly wrong. The thing that hooks them up is the same as in bullfighting, is that when they in this sport, you are obliged to find your best version. You have to give your best by training, by committing to the sport, spiritually, mentally. Because if you lose, it's not like losing another sport. You just get unhappy and go home. You can get hurt here. So once you are confronted with your best version, you just get addicted to find out more. And that really, really trespasses to the audiences. And it just creates a beautiful connection.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine, the types of people with this MMA world that you're in now, it seems like it's bringing together all the things that we've discussed today, and courage and strength and life and death and content, community, and how things are presented. And it seems like it's a perfect kind of segue into a next chapter for you. Where do you see, you said this is a newer sport. Even it's newer in the US to many degrees as well. You've been able to see things in your career at an international level. Where do you see this over the next 5 years, 10 years? What do you see for the company, the sport, yourself, as things evolve in the next chapter?
So we're talking earlier about shorter form content. Yeah, this interacts perfectly with that. A soccer game will take 2 hours. A combat could take a maximum of 25 minutes. It's a world championship. Here in Spain, we don't have that, so it's 15 minutes. And it can be finalized within seconds. So it's much easier to watch you don't have to have a TV, you can watch it on your phone, or you can watch it on TV. So I do think the sport is going to be, probably it's already in the US, but definitely not in Spain, a top tier sport. I think we will compete with audiences with the king sport in Spain, with his soccer, football. And soon will be, I think we're already dealing with, tennis, basketball, cycling, and hopefully we'll be a top 5 sport within the next 24 months, if not earlier. I think that will happen. It's important for us to have to be recurrent and we're sticking to an event per week. It will take us at least maybe 18 months from now, but once we get there and we're able to have a constant storytelling going on about the fighters, what they do, where they're coming from, why they do it, what are their personalities about, then audiences connect in a much meaningful way. And that's what we try to build now.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited to follow the journey. It seems like you have all the right ingredients in the stew to make this into something very, very special for the country, the world, and will be fun to follow along the journey.
To our next event. You're invited.
Where is it?
So we have one a month, but the next one it's in 3 weeks from now, March 29th here in Madrid. If you want, you can do Seville. April 12th, just before Easter, which is a beautiful week in Seville. Then, one every month. So you just let me know, and if there's no event when you're coming, we'll make sure we make one for you.
I would love that. My sister studied abroad in Sevilla for a whole semester, and
there you have it.
Maybe I told my sister, we're brother sister bonding. Let's go. So
let's take care again.
Yeah. Well, Arturo, this has been super meaningful. I'm super excited to follow along. And where can people find you, the site, the company? Where do they reach out?
I'm not very active on social media. I'm glad I was never high on social media, but I gave everything away before the summer, and my life is way better. So unless it's LinkedIn, Arturo Guillén, or the companies that we're running, in this case in Instagram, the fighting league is called WOW FC, WOWSC. Both places are easy for us.
I'll follow along on Instagram and tell others to do the same. Arturo, thank you so much for your time and appreciate you making this opportunity possible.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Very honored. I hope to talk to you soon again.
Arturo's story reminds us that wisdom isn't always found in classrooms. It's often forged through grit, adversity, and radical curiosity. From data analytics to death-defying arenas, his perspective on courage, value, and human potential is unforgettable. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with a friend. And as always, follow the One Away Show for more powerful moments of transformation. I'll see you next time.